This is Malva, and she is without question the thirstiest character in the entire Pokemon franchise. Don't believe me? Well, these are actual panels of her thirsting over Lysandre in the Pokemon Adventures manga. But she's not all hormones and hard eyes here. In fact, she's the opposite, because this simping, while it was real, is just a mask. A mask to cover her true sinister motives. The Pokemon Adventures manga is a widely different adaptation of the Pokemon video game story, and for the X and Y arc, they tell the story of the games in a much more fulfilling way. And when it comes to Team Flare, their goal is still to reset the world and create a more beautiful world through the use of Kalos' legendary Pokemon and the ultimate weapon, so their roles are still similar, but we get to see different sides of the characters here that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten a chance to see in the games or the anime. While Xerosic and the Team Flare admins are much stronger characters here and actually serve a good amount of importance, the three characters that we're going to be focusing on in this video are Malva, Lysandre, and Malva's secret competition. A third character who's in contest for winning over Lysandre's love. Lysandre is still very much who he is as Team Flare's boss and leader. He still has the same goals and motivations, but the way he goes about these goals is much more cunning in this adaptation. Our 5 protagonists even figured out that he's the antagonist quite early in the story, and Lysandre still finds a way to maneuver around it. And just in general, he's more practical with this approach. He's so practical that when it comes to the team, he doesn't really hold any emotion towards his team members, but instead is actually very professional around them, and only ever speaks to them like a boss or a leader. And this doesn't really upset anyone on the team, except Malva. Malva's introduction in the X and Y manga comes in parallel to Diantha's introduction in the manga, and this is because someone appointed by Team Flare fails a mission because of Diantha. And Malva's appearance in her introduction isn't modest at all. Not just in terms of her looks and the way she shows off her body in the panels, but also because of the way she acts and behaves. She knows she's tough, she knows how strong she is, and she knows that people will obey her. And so, she has all the fun she could possibly have with that power. Scorching people with fire when they fail and still taking pride and amusement in that. And even in this particular situation, she was upset with the guy who failed, but she was happy with the diamonds he got for her. And that says a lot about her and her ego. But the one character who's constantly challenging and stepping on her ego, just in terms of their mere existence, is the one character who she's constantly paired up with, both in terms of romance and battle. And that's Diantha. Yeah, in this manga, Malva and Diantha are pretty much on equal footing in terms of battling, as they face off against each other a few times throughout this adventure. While Diantha doesn't know of Malva's affiliations with Team Flare, as the story progresses, she comes to learn of this by the midway point of the series. But Diantha has been a pain for Malva well before any of this. Not just because Diantha's thwarting Team Flare's plans, but because, well, she's the champion, whereas Malva is an Elite Four member, which alone is a hit on her ego. Even before her official Team Flare introduction, she's pretending to play her Holocast and news reporter role and acting all nice and sweet while talking about Diantha. But as she's walking up for this performance, her first conversation here is about Diantha, and just hearing her name ticks her off. But that's not all. Lysandre doesn't show any interest in Malva, and as I mentioned earlier, the relationship between the two is professional. But when we're introduced to Lysandre in the story, we're also immediately introduced to Diantha as well. And one of the first things he comments about Diantha is how attractive of a person she is. And you guys have no idea how much that alone hurts Malva. Really, all three of these characters parallel each other or have ties to each other in some way. Malva and Diantha, as we just established, as potential love interests for Lysandre, being members of the Pokemon League and antagonistic rivals, Lysandre and Malva being the upper heads of Team Flare as Malva is appointed second in command here, and Diantha and Lysandre paralleling each other in terms of opposing views right from the beginning of the manga. But ultimately, Lysandre, Malva, and Team Flare are on the same side of wanting to reset the world, whereas Diantha and the other heroes are trying to stop them. As the kids try to stop Team Flare's plans, we get moments of Malva with other characters, and even when she's with the other Team Flare admins, she can't stop talking about Lysandre, such as when she's showing concern for him and his capability to master Mega Evolution in such a short span of time. We also get to see more of her cynical side as she's witnessing an all-out battle between both sides from afar, and she really only joins the battle to equalize the playing field with a 3-on-3, and mainly because she wants to crush Diantha, trapping her and forcing her into a 1-on-1. Diantha realizes that Malva has been controlling the media and questions whether or not Malva is the boss of the organization, to which Malva is just humored by all of this, and does whatever possible to torture her and further gain amusement through it, as Malva is totally envious and enraged by Diantha having everything: beauty, talent, praise, and love from a young age. Malva sinks Diantha deep into the ground, And the next time we see Malva, she becomes the trainer and commander of the legendary Pokemon Yveltal. Since of course the children, or specifically our main female protagonist Y, got her hands on Thirstiest. She puts up a strong fight, but the battle has to quickly end because Xerosic warns them that if Yveltal and Thirstiest clash like this, it will result in a never-ending stalemate. Malva leaves and Blue joins the fight and finds out where Malva trapped Diantha underground. Diantha comes back to her senses, and while she's upset about Malva and her actions, her conviction to stop Team Flare doesn't waver. A few days later, Lysandre's training and Malva's just there oogling at him, making sure that no one disturbs him. She's just admiring everything about him and standing there in awe, but if you look at her face when she's complimenting Lysandre, you may notice that's the same kind of face she makes when she was a news reporter talking about Diantha. Could that possibly mean something? Maybe, but you subscribing will definitely mean a lot to me, so if you're enjoying the video, I hope you do. This is where Lysandre acknowledges Malva's work, and Malva continues to gas up and praise Lysandre. To which, all Lysandre responds with is, "What happened to Diantha?" Showing where his real interest and attention lies. And that doesn't make Malva happy at all. Even when Malva reports that Diantha may be at the bottom of the ocean, Lysandre doesn't seem to be thrilled by it, but they continue forward, making plans for their final move, with Malva taking Lysandre's side on every little thing possible. The children rush on ahead towards Lysandre, but Diantha gets stopped by who else but Malva. Malva isn't here to entertain her or play with her food anymore. The moment she gets a chance, Malva scorches Diantha's head. And as X and Blue and the other heroes battle Lysandre, we don't actually see what happens to Diantha here till a little bit later. But it turns out that she used a technique that Red used in his battle against Giovanni from years ago that she picked up from Blue, where she had a Pokeball underneath her heel ready so that Gardevoir could save her. But unfortunately for Diantha, Malva already stole her Keystone and heads out to assist Lysandre in his fight with Diantha chasing her down. Malva and Diantha reach the battlefield and take for an aerial battle. A battle to finally end their fierce rivalry. Malva notices how fired up her Talonflame is, and by seeing this, she comments about how fired up she is, and how she hopes that Lysandre will take notice to it, leading to the craziest panel from her from the entire manga. Hey man, I told you guys she was freaky deaky. Both the aerial battle with Malva and the on-ground battle with Lysandre press forward, and X finally puts a stop to Lysandre's plans by using the power of 5 Mega Evolutions at once, which does involve Diantha's Keystone, but if you want to learn more about that, then you have to check out my video about it right here. The climax of this fight leads to Lysandre falling from atop of Zygarde down to the crumbling ground. Malva is teasing Diantha's battling, but she turns and notices Lysandre's fall. Malva immediately lets go of Talonflame and descends down to grab and save him. And Diantha rushes in to reach for Malva. But as Diantha gets close, to her shock, Malva slaps her hand away, with only her focus being on Lysandre. And as we flip the page, we see Malva lying there atop a broken and crippled Lysandre. Malva comments on how ironic it is that Lysandre fell from the very world that he dreamt of, and how she suffered the same fate. But Blaine tells her that she's in a better spot, as her injuries aren't as severe as Lysandre's, to which Malva says that it doesn't matter, since Lysandre won't be around to protect her anymore. This line reads as some deep admiration and love for Lysandre, which Diantha even comments about and asks Malva about if that's the reason as to why she fell to her demise, because she loved Lysandre that much. To which Malva actually reveals her true colors and admits that she never loved or even cared for Lysandre in the first place, that all she wanted him for was to steal the world that he created once she got the chance. And the reason as to why she slapped Diantha's hand out of the way in the first place is because she would rather be gone from the world than be pitied by Diantha. Her hate for Diantha was stronger than her will to exist. Knowing that she doesn't actually love Lysandre, this means that this is the single strongest emotion that she harbors for a person, and that is absolutely crazy. A Pokemon character who is driven by hate and hate for a single person alone to the point where nothing else in the world matters. Malva is then carried by the Elite Four members to presumably the hospital and later jail, but this is undoubtedly the most twisted and saddest adaptation of a regular Pokemon character or villain that I've seen from the Pokemon games to the manga. If you want to see another similar character in this regard, you can check out my video on Ruby and Courtney, who meet a similar but different fate. Or if you want to learn more about the X and Y manga, then you can check out this video on Emma and Zygarde, who have a pivotal role to play within this story. Thanks for watching, and thanks to all my members. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys over on the next video, alright? Later.